And I am going to call the Village of North Hudson Public Safety Meeting for Thursday, February 13th, 2025 to order. I will conduct the roll call. Trustee Olson, absent. Trustee Porter.
Here.
And Chair McGurran, I'm here. All right. Next order of business is comments from the floor. So this is an opportunity for Village of North Hudson residents, property and business owners to make the committee aware of topics, issues, or opportunities not on tonight's agenda. But if you want to speak to something that is on the agenda, we will hear that now as well, because we won't be having discussion during the agenda items other than by the chiefs. So if you would like to make comments, I'd like to welcome, there's a number of people here, I'd like to welcome you to the meeting this evening. And if you can take the podium up front, because this will be on the River Channel, so we just want to make sure that everybody's comments can be heard by anyone who is attending. So when you take the podium, just state your name and where you live, and we'd love to hear what you have to say.
My name is Louise Mulder. I am at 1006 St. Croix Street North, just down the street. I'm here talking about the livestock, mostly chickens, but livestock in general. The biggest thing I have to say is, why is it being so nitpicky on chickens? We don't have a fence ordinance. We don't have a kennel ordinance. We don't have any of those rules if you want a dog. Now there's all these stipulations coming up. Oh, if you have chickens, you're going to have to fence in your whole yard. You're going to have to do this. Why not keep it the same as every other animal? Just an animal at large. Keep your animal in your yard as long as it's in your yard. Whether you do leash, fence, travel tractor kind of chicken style, whatever you want to do. Why put a fence regulation on just a chicken? Like, dogs don't have a fence regulation. Just seems like above and beyond. I don't know why there's so much focus on the chicken. We've been doing this for over a year. It just seems it's getting blown out of proportion. On top of that, the livestock thing, I don't know why we're banning that all of a sudden. A lot of people here already have peacocks, potbelly pigs, maybe someone has a goat, and some people have house goats in and out and stuff like that. I haven't heard any reports. I haven't seen anything on police things or anything that they're causing a disturbance. Don't know why all this has to get banned, and especially for domestic fowl and other kinds of birds like quail, duck, peacock, anything like that. Why are those getting banned, and why are we only allowing chickens? We should keep it the way it was. We haven't had any problems. People moved here because they like it, that it's different. And the quote going out there right now is, don't Hudson, or North Hudson. Keep us like how we are. It should be just as simple as the dog, cat kind of thing. Don't have those extra regulations for fencing and everything, and especially roosters right now with the economy. If you want to go buy chickens and chicks right now, a lot of people don't even have them in stock. So everyone say, oh, you can just buy them every year. That's baloney. That is not what you do. When you're trying to be self-sufficient with your chickens, you're going to be breeding them, trading them with your friends. You're going to be doing that to stay self-sufficient. Right now, you can't even get them. A lot of places have no stock. There's nowhere to buy them. So there's the limit. It's very, very limited right now. So that should be another reason why we want roosters. Another reason, they're protection. So to be self-sufficient and protection for the herd. So I just don't understand why there's so much focus on this chicken. They're not out there murdering people or attacking them. Dogs are way more aggressive, way more risks involved, and there's a lot less regulation. It's a lot of wasted taxpayer dollars, lawyers involved in everything in this. It's a chicken.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening?
All right. Yeah, I'm Brandon Lorg at 1011 St. Croix Street. I do agree with Elise here. I think it's actually somewhat fruitless. I've kind of did a pretty good dive onto how would you implement chicken ordinances versus other livestock ordinances. Simply just going forward with noise violations would really actually kind of just hit home on kind of, I think, what the primary issue is in general. When you talk about the sheltering and the fencing requirements, when you really look into how chickens behave, I mean, you could have a 6-foot fence or a 10-foot fence, and it still isn't going to really, reach any objective in terms of, keeping chickens in your yard unless you have to de-wing them. And when you do get chickens or you order chickens, they're usually not, separated male versus female. So if you're saying, you can't have roosters, well, when you get a batch of chickens, rooster isn't really a problem until you hit at least 8 weeks. And I know a lot of people will get a batch of chickens, and at 8 weeks, no matter what, wouldn't have a rooster around any longer. So again, it's always kind of under the premise of just a noise violation. So I certainly agree with the noise ordinances, just continue with that. And then just, again, keeping out the other animals, like the concept of a goat used for invasive species removal, which is what the attorney recommended. I mean, let's be honest, people are going to do kind of what they want to do. There's invasive species all around us. So if you specify that, half my grass is invasive. So I think keeping with that would be the biggest thing. And it did talk about how would we enforce such rules. And I kind of like almost like how the police department just enforces anything. Kind of just 2 warnings and you get a ticket. But I would advocate that if there is a true problem, to give people time, maybe 14 days in between certain warnings. Because if like my own dog became a problem, I'd probably need at least 14 days to find a new home for the dog. So yeah, maybe 2 warnings, a ticket, and then removal, but allow at least, a month and a half for that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you ask it at the microphone, because no one will know what you're saying.
It's always a little more nervous getting up at.
Right.
Yeah, right, so that I'm feeling on the spot.
Sorry.
Right? Thanks, guys. No, fair enough. No, I just wanted to know, because it appears I came in a few minutes late, what is the specific chicken or wildfowl or whatever ordinance that's in question here?
This is public comment, so people are just making comments that they want the committee to be aware of.
Okay, so there isn't a specific ordinance that someone is trying to prevent them from keeping chickens or other fowl in town?
We'll have.
So at the last meeting, they talked about having facilitating.
Sir, they can't hear you they can't hear you on the recording. So I'm just gonna say that this is an item on the agenda. We'll be speaking to it on the agenda today, but there is. So this is a time for public comment about the items that are actually not on the agenda. And we're taking comment right now for items on the agenda, because we won't be taking public comment during the meeting.
Oh, okay, super.
So if you have something you want to say, you should just say it.
I just had a question about what chicken issue we were talking about here. I'm 100% supportive on raising chickens in town. We did so ourselves for several years. Is there happen to be an extra copy of the agenda handy? Oh, thank you.
Anyone else have a comment? Just come on up.
Hi, my name is Amanda Oswald. I'm from 324 6th Street North. I did want to come here today to talk about our experience and why we purchased our home about 2 years ago in North Hudson. 3 years ago, our son was diagnosed with severe autism. We were given a few options to help him, and nothing was really taking hold at first. One of the things that we did find that was helping him is when we visited friends that had animals like chickens. And we found that it really just brought his spark back that we had lost at the time. Since then, a year later, we bought our home here in North Hudson, knowing that we could have chickens. Having our own chickens has brought a lot of benefit to our family, because for our son, when he was still really lost within that diagnosis, he found that spark of joy that he was otherwise missing. Additionally, we were able to say, okay, we need to change his diet. He had a lot of nutritional needs. We were able then to feed our chickens a diet that helped then with the eggs that they provided, providing our son with that nutrition without having to buy very expensive eggs at the store that fit those needs. And especially now, we all know that egg prices have gone to $5 or above for normal eggs, let alone eggs that follow organic and other specifications. we found that to be an extreme value to our family personally and to the people around us that we then got to share our story with and share what we learned and what helped us and what might help them within our community here in North Hudson and beyond. I do understand that there might need to be regulations put in place, but with too many regulations does come a burden then to those families that are already being burdened by other factors such as medical diagnoses and therapies and things that may or may not be covered by insurance. So we're really grateful that we've had that opportunity, and we'd really like to keep that for us and for a lot of our neighbors. We get to go for walks and see a peacock or see ducks or see other animals, and that has been a huge joy for our kids and also gives us the opportunity. They're not school age yet, so we get that opportunity to use those as lessons and then get to learn about different animals and life cycles and things that we might not get if we were living in a town that didn't allow that. So I really appreciate here in the village that we have that opportunity. Thanks for hearing us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else like to speak? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Shaylee Jones-Faunus, and I am at 404 Lemon Street North, and I've come to you today to speak about chickens. And first off, I just want to clarify and say that I myself own 15 chickens, and they live in a coop across the street from my house, and I share them with my neighbor. And not only do we split the eggs, but he gives them to about 15 families around the community. And with the cost of eggs continuously increasing due to H5N1, or avian influenza as it's commonly called, many people in North Hudson utilize my chicken's eggs. And if there was an ordinance put into place regarding how many chickens you can keep or specific coop requirements, we already have 15 chickens and both a coop and fence built. Many people are in the same situation in our community, and coops aren't cheap to build. And the average starting range is at about at least $300 to $600, and that's if you have a lot of tools or supplies already. And changing the coop that's already built to fit the ordinance could easily be just as or more expensive than building a whole new one. And if there was to be a limit of, say, 10 chickens, then I would have to get rid of 5 of mine. And not only would this be emotionally damaging to me because they're beloved pets that I've had for years, but it would also be detrimental to the chickens as well, because they're incredibly social creatures that form bonds with each other. If you've ever been to a farm store in the spring when they sell baby chicks, there's actually usually a limit on a minimum amount that you have to buy because they're such social animals. And in regards to the noise ordinance, none of my chickens are roosters, and there's a common myth that chickens are noisy, and hens or female chickens are generally not noisy at all. And they make soft clucking noises that are quieter than a leaf blower or a dog. None of my surrounding neighbors have ever complained about any of my chickens. And I got a comment at school one time from a neighbor who said she really enjoyed them, and they didn't bother her or wake her up in the morning at all. And her dogs could easily bark louder than them. And I've also seen an exponential number of people, such as dog walkers, joggers, and kids that are leaving school or going to school, stop by the fence section that runs by the road, simply just take pictures or just watch my chickens. And many of them are like kind of unique looking. They're like uncommon breeds, so they're like pretty. And from my experience, raising chickens over the years has given me invaluable life lessons and practical experience in the kind of responsibility and management that goes into raising poultry. And currently, I'm a senior at the high school in Hudson. I participate in FFA, which is a national agriculture club for students. And through FFA, I'm working on a supervised agriculture experience, or SAE, which is, and my chosen SAE is raising chickens. And an SAE allows students to apply what they've learned in the classroom to a real world setting. And I'm actually on track to win an award in FFA for doing this SAE called a state degree. And it's one of the most coveted awards in FFA. And I wouldn't have had the opportunity to receive this award without being able to raise chickens. And finally, I want to address the fact that some people think chickens smell excessively. This is a myth. Chickens themselves actually have no smell, and it's their feces that has the potential to smell if not managed properly. And the average chicken only produces 3 to 4 ounces of excrement per day, whereas the average dog produces a quarter of a pound of excrement per day. And as of right now, there's 4 dogs allowed per household according to the village ordinance, and it would take 12 to 16 chickens to produce the same amount of excrement per day. And additionally, dog manure cannot be composted due to harmful bacteria, parasites such as hookworms, roundworms, and tapeworms that can infect humans. And canine feces also has higher amounts of nitrogen and phosphorus than cows, chickens, and pigs. And severe smell and ammonia buildup from chickens and other poultry and animal feces that people often associate these animals with are really only present in a commercial setting. And to conclude, chickens are a huge part of my life. They're a huge part of the community, and I think ordinances controlling their numbers and coop requirements will really just be detrimental to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations on your project.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything they want to say to the Public Safety Committee this evening? Come on up.
Hello, my name is Yuri Levshno. My family owns a property at 539 Lemon Street, just down the road from here. I've been hearing about this talk about the change of ordinance for chicken population control, and it baffled me a little bit because part of the reason we moved in North Hudson with my family was to be closer to my wife's family and to be able to have this kind of opportunity to raise our own stock. It is important for me culturally. I grew up raising all kinds of birds and animals and whatnot. I want to teach my kids the processes and the importance to be able to grow your own food and be able to harvest your own food. The matters that my wife and neighbors mentioned to me that were at question here, or rather the concern, I think a little bit far-fetched and stretched out. It might be that the matter of one particular instance taints every other owner in the neighborhood, meaning that, let's say you go to the restaurant and you have a bad experience, you ain't gonna close all the restaurants in the neighborhood. You're probably gonna deal with that one particular instance, and that's what I'm looking at her. As the previous speakers mentioned, there's quite a few discrepancies in the understanding of life of chickens, upkeep, maintenance, and I think one of the important parts that was mentioned is when you get your new chickens in the family, the sexing of the chickens, they don't always get sexed, meaning that, once again, you don't know what you're getting. You might get all roosters, you might get some of each. And in this case, you're gambling. With the current situation, with the federal government destroying lots of flock across the country, it become next to impossible to replenish your stock. It's a lot easier for you to raise your own chickens. Not only that, if you get your chicken today, well, you ain't gonna harvest it for at least another probably 8 months before you're gonna see anything from that chicken, either if it's a bird chicken or meat chicken or if it's a egg-laying chicken. It's months before you see any results, and in those months, you're investing in that chicken, you're feeding it, you're cleaning it, you're doing everything else. Another part, the important part for my family especially, is that this creates kind of a bond for us with our community in the way that, as previous speakers mentioned, we get to share the fruits of our work with our neighbors. We get to, share our eggs and have conversations over it. I have some neighbors that stop by and be like, hey, when are we getting the next batch? And it's free. We don't ask money for it, even though that's probably another point. For some families, it might be also a source of income. You can go to a farmer's market and advertise your eggs, which I think is an awesome opportunity and great, once again, teaching experience for kids to learn, like, hey, not everything falls from the sky. You have to work for things. I do, however, believe that, like everything else, since it's a public matter, it becomes a public matter, certain particular situations have to be probably addressed on a specific basis, meaning that if there's nuisance going on with noise ordinance, or if there's some kind of concern with the smell or dirtiness of particular property, then maybe it should be addressed on that particular case, meaning one should be able to reach out to the owner and relate to them their concerns, like, hey, your rooster's being a nuisance running around neighborhood eating cats and dogs, which I don't think is ever the case, but nonetheless. Same thing with a matter of dirtiness or with a smell. If there is a problem with that, which I haven't noticed in the neighborhood, we do walk our dogs now and then around the neighborhood, and I've never seen a problem. I've never heard or experienced a problem of the kind myself. We do keep chickens enclosed in the enclosed coop. We have a small run that chickens get to explore, and none of our immediate neighbors ever voiced any concern in that regard, which once again, I would appreciate if they say, hey, we're bothered by this, or can you do something about that? Because I'd be more than happy to take care of any issue to avoid their discomfort. And I really hope that, this ordinance won't change a lot if it has to change, so we could continue pursuing our goals and our dreams and raise our kids with that experience, because I do believe that is important. It's important for me, it's important for my wife, it's important for my neighbors. So let's keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, anyone else that would like to speak? Did you want to speak?
We've all spoken, so it's up to you if you want.
And we're good. I'm here in support of chickens.
We just had a comment in support of chickens. Okay. Do you want to go up and speak at the microphone?
I'm saying I'm not sure what the proposed changes are.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else want to speak? And going once, going twice, and we're closing public comment. And we're going to item 4 on the agenda, approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve minutes from January 9th, 2025?
Yes, I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 2025.
So Trustee Porter moves to approve the minutes from January 9th, 2025. I will second that. And all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? No opposition. The minutes are approved. And I'll just say I need to repeat who makes the motion and who seconds it, because the minutes are being done remotely. Right. So it might seem kind of odd, but that's why I need to do it. Okay. Yes, we are. This is a quorum. There was a question. 5th item on the agenda, police chief's report. Chief?
All right, I provided to the committee in advance of the meeting. It does have quite a number of items that are new, so I'll try to go through it quickly. But under old business, the municipal, and I apologize for my voice, I've been suffering from a cold for like a week now. Municipal court abolition. So as of February 4th, the North Hudson PD will now be issuing, or has been issuing, municipal citations, violations through the circuit court. Because the village board has abolished the municipal court effective at the end of the judge's term, which is at the end of April. And so in trying to transition in a seamless manner where our citations will be written to the circuit court so that the municipal court will have time to kind of lower their case numbers and collect fines, and so they can really go to the end of their term, either hopefully having no cases left or minimal that they'll then have to transfer over to the circuit court moving forward. I worked with the circuit court, and we have assigned dates for all of our citations. Any traffic citations that we write will be the 4th Wednesday of the month at 8:45 a.m., and those appearances will be at the county government center on the 2nd floor. The non-traffic adult citations, so if it's a disorderly conduct or a theft, damage to property, those types of cases would be the 4th Wednesday of the month, then at 10:15 a.m., so a couple hours later. And non-traffic juvenile cases, truancy, or if it's disorderly conduct or retail theft, but it's by a juvenile, those would be scheduled for the 3rd Wednesday of the month at 10:15 a.m. All of them, again, no longer here in the Village of North Hudson, but at the St. Croix County Government Center in Hudson up on Carmichael Road. The one thing that we did discuss during the conversation about whether or not to abolish the municipal court, the fine amount for each citation that will go through the circuit court will increase by $76.50 based on the number of additional fees that come along with the use of the municipal court. It could have been more than that, but then there's a $38 municipal fee that was reduced because we don't have a municipal court charge that we have to add to it. So any citation previously, it will now be $76.50 additional charge to the defendant. Any questions on that? All right. Under new business, I do have a work anniversary that is coming up this Saturday. Officer Kelly Scharfbillig will celebrate 5 years with the department on Saturday, and so she will receive a plaque to commemorate her milestone anniversary. She is the last of our department to reach that 5-year. Last year I had 2 officers, a sergeant and an officer, that reached the 5-year mark, and then Kelly will be this month coming up. So, the 2024 year-end data, 10-year comparison, I had written in the email or in the chief's report that it was attached. I neglected to attach it, so it should be in front of you now. I will just briefly go through that, and if there are questions, be happy to answer that. But I did put together the past 10 years to show kind of averages for different areas. For 2024, the number of officers that we had is 4.67 because we had an officer that resigned in August, and after our third, we went through 3 hiring processes to try to fill that, and we were unable to do that in 2024. We had an average number of traffic stops of 1.5 per day. Traffic citations in 2024, we had 112. Non-traffic citations, those other ordinance citations, 27. Warnings, 601. That could be written or verbal warnings. Reportable crashes in the Village of North Hudson in 2024, we had 19. A reportable crash would be that in which one property owner has $1,000 damage or more, or governmental damage of $250, or any injury. So that's how we get to reportable crash. So you may have heard of more crashes than that. That was just a fender bender, something that didn't reach those criteria. OMBWI, or drunk driving arrests, we had 11 in 2024, and 4 citations for underage alcohol. We did department caseload, where we actually took a case number for some sort of incident at 755. So if you look at the top line of the 2024, you'll see the 10 years previous, and then there's a 10-year average. Basically, we were under our 10-year average for traffic citations, for non-traffic citations, almost double for warnings for the 10-year average. So we're doing a good job of trying to get people to voluntarily comply with those laws and ordinances. A little high on, or a few higher on the reportable crashes than the 10-year average, right around the average for OWI arrests, and right just under the average for alcohol citations. On the second page then, related specifically to traffic, we have just the information on the last couple of years of traffic citations by kind of our most common violations. You'll see on there, although I want people to make sure that they follow the speed, because we may have given a lot of warnings for this. We did not issue any citations for someone traveling 1 to 10 miles over the speed limit. I do know that there were people that were stopped for those types of violations, but obviously received warnings on those. Of interest, though, over the last couple of years since 2021, when we had our new highway put in, those speed violations that were in excess of 16 miles an hour, so anywhere from 16 to 19 miles over, we're at 25 for last year. 20 to 20 miles an hour, or 20 to 29 miles an hour over, we had 10 citations last year, and 30 to 39 miles an hour over was 4 for last year. So people have really increased their speed. A lot of these citations are from Highway 35 on our main drag. And then we have seen an uptick in operating without a valid driver's license. We've had quite a few of those over the last several years, and also people operating without insurance, as it became mandatory a couple of years ago that you must have insurance when driving on highways in the state of Wisconsin. Any questions on the kind of year-end review?
So, Chief, would it be accurate to say that overall last year was fairly typical, with the exceptions that you just noted, and that the amount of work that you're able to do is really dependent on the number of officers? Like, the fluctuation seems to correspond to how many people you have.
There is some of that, but it's also dependent on the number of calls for service that we receive. So I might only have 4 officers, and we may get a lot of people that call in for different things, or I may have not as many officers, and we get less people that call in, depending on what's happening in their world. So I don't know that there's a direct correlation to that, but as far as being proactive, you'll see those cases where we're doing proactive policing. Yes, when we have more officers, we're going to have more of those types of cases where they're maybe seeing a violation of an abandoned vehicle or something at a person's house versus a neighbor calling in saying, my neighbor has an abandoned vehicle, and then we're responsive to that. So yeah, it'd be hard to say that's a direct correlation, but there is some meaning to that.
That makes sense. Thank you for pointing that out about the proactive policing that you're able to do. Thank you. Do you have any questions or comments?
No. All right, and then the next item is the parking citation procedure for contesting a violation. Due to the fact that we will no longer be able to utilize the municipal court for the administration of parking citations, and because in order to write a parking citation through the circuit court, we would have to issue it as a non-traffic violation, and so the fine amount would be anywhere from starting at about $114 for a parking citation. We'd like to keep that lower and keep doing the same thing that we're doing now, where it's a $20 citation for general parking violations, and then a $50 violation for handicap parking. Those numbers can obviously be adjusted by the village board as needed, but in order to do that, we have to transition the administration to the police department to run it through our traffic software. And so the question that I posed to the Wisconsin Chiefs of Police Association forum, basically all chiefs in the state, you put a question on there, and a lot of people responded. I asked them, okay, if you have a municipal citation, but we don't have a municipal court, how does someone contest that citation? If they don't believe that they violated that parking rule, how do they have basically their due process? And so I got a lot back from agencies that said it's a very, very small amount of citations that they will have people contest them. They did offer up one that's been working well, and in talking with our village prosecutor, she's seen this in other communities that she has in this area, is that they would talk to the officer that issued the citation to see if there was anything that could be done. If that didn't go very far, they could talk to a supervisor. Maybe if a $20 citation could be offered for $10 and kind of meet halfway. And if at the end they did not feel that they were getting the results that they wanted to, what we would do is we would dismiss the local $20 citation, reissue it as an NTC, because then there would be a judge that would make a decision. If they take it to the judge and they're successful, obviously it would be a $0 fine. If they take it to the judge and they're unsuccessful, it would be whatever that NTC fine would be. So just trying to figure out a way to make sure that people have the rights to contest them, that it's not the police department that is the final say in those. We shouldn't be a judge, jury, and executioner, if you will. And so that was the process that I heard back from multiple chiefs across the state. There were a couple of them that didn't really fit with how we would want to move forward because of that whole idea that it was the police chief that made the final decision on those things. And so that's what I'm looking at moving forward with. We still have time where we can write municipal parking citations to our municipal court until the end of April. And so we'll transition that probably the first part of March, because then we have to figure out how to take payment and those types of things. So just wanted to make the committee aware of the fact that the police department is working on getting those parking citations in line with all the rest of the changes with municipal court.
Do you think that'll make more work for your team?
Not for my team, for my administrative assistant.
Okay.
And she has the ability and the flexibility to be able to.
She's ready and raring to go.
We don't write that many parking citations, so it's not going to take a new position or anything like that. And then the final items that are typically on the chief's report are the incident breakdown. Nothing out of the ordinary for the past month. We have 45 cases that we have assigned since the beginning of the year already, which is pretty common for where we're at this time of year. You'll see on that document then also our written verbal warnings for and citations by officer. And that completes the police chief's report.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions? Trustee Porter?
No, but I would assume if somebody does get a parking citation and they want to contest it, and they've got to take it to the court in Hudson, it would probably be that $76 fine if they were to lose?
No, it would be closer to $114 because there's a base rate and then plus the $76.50 for additional fees.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's risky business.
Right.
Just don't park illegally.
So says the chief. Fire chief's report.
Good evening.
Do you want to go up to the, oh, you've got a speaker there. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Attached to the agenda was the January fire report. So far to date, there's only been one call in the village. So it's been very quiet, so we'll keep it that way. Also attached, I submitted our 2024 annual report. A couple items I'll point out in there is this year we started to recognize our members that have gone above and beyond, I guess, on incidents and calls and training and everything like that. So we've established an awards committee, and we're working through how to nominate people. So this year pretty much was a lot of recognition that I went back and did. But if you look and see some of the stuff that our membership did this year with rescuing people out of a couple fires. One of our divers was successful in pulling a victim that fell through the ice over Woodbury as part of the dive team. And our public outreach award, firefighter Tom Zulli, he probably, of our 89 community events, he probably was at 70 of them. So it's just different things like that that we're trying to recognize our members for. Yes, they don't like the recognition because they feel it's part of their job, but there's a lot of them that do go above and beyond and do some pretty extraordinary things. The village report in here was down just a tad from the year before in calls, but overall was up again. You have a tendency to like to have windstorms up here, which is a lot of demand on service when that happens. So it was down a couple calls from 2023, but still up from the 5-year average. One last thing, our department is not getting any slower. We set another record last year. 2023 had 618 calls. In 2024, we had 657. So we had another increase. We've had over close to 26% increase in calls for service in the last 5 years. And I don't think that trend is going to change. I think as the communities continue to grow and there's a lot of people in the communities, that trend is going to continue to go up. So right now, another update, I'm in the process right now of writing an RFP for a staffing study. I think we've gotten to the point now in our department that with the call volume and the inspections and everything else that goes along with it, we're going to have to look at some form of full-time staff at some point, whether it's a couple people a day augmented by public or by paid on calls or however it goes. But we're looking at doing a staffing study from somebody to come in from the outside and do a full review of our operations and where we're at, where we should be. I know a lot of departments just west of us in Minnesota have gone through this transition where, number one, you start to get less and less people like to volunteer, and number two, the demands for service go up, which becomes a hardship on volunteers after a while. So that'll be coming up hopefully this spring or early summer, going out for proposal for that.
So Chief, your comments in your introduction to the annual report, which thank you for sharing, and we've got it on our website, and it's very, very good and very helpful. So and what I just heard you say and what I'm reading in here is that the call volume is going up. The response time is slower, not because you're getting slower, but because you have more calls that you're trying to respond to with the same amount of resources. Yes.
Our having simultaneous calls is becoming more and more also. And the fact that with more calls, after a while, you start to see less and less people coming in for calls, because if you have a busy weekend and it's they have lives outside the fire department as volunteers, and a lot of them have kids and families, and by the time you have that 10th call on Sunday, the family's like, hey, wait a minute, there's family things that have to be done, or a lot of times they're out of town and everything like that. So our guys do a tremendous job of providing service. But I think there's so much demand for calls that eventually that trends off a little bit for people coming in, just because it is a lot. So your staffing study, which you had talked to this committee about that previously, is that something that you think will be grant funded then? Is that? No, it won't be grant funded. It'll be funded through either our budget or our reserves or something to that extent. I guess we haven't got to that point yet.
Okay.
I'm just working with our city administrator and getting an RFP put together to see what that looks like, and then to decide everything that we want to cover in the assessment. So,
Well, that's great that you're planning ahead for our community's safety. Thank
yes.
you. Any comments, questions?
No, except that, well, I do. Generally speaking, is it population related to why the number of calls are going up, or is the fire department taking on more service related things?
It's a little of both. It's a population driver. More people, there's more happening, more going on. Vehicle accidents especially. I believe last year we were out on I-94 close to 60 times for vehicle accidents. So, right, there's an influx of people, there's more accidents, more apartment buildings going in, multifamilies where we have fire alarms or different things like that, drives up some of the calls. We're starting to do a little bit more with EMS. We're starting to assist a little more on the more labor-intensive calls, such as cardiac arrests. So we're taking on more services for the benefit of the community. You get better patient care with more resources helping out. So yeah, so it's a little combination of both. There's an increase in population, but we're also providing more service to the community also. So.
Very good.
All right, thank you. Item 7, pedestrian safety and traffic concerns. This relates to beginning of a conversation we had at the last public safety meeting brought up by a citizen about speeding and lack of safety for pedestrians and bikers on 7th Street North and going down Riverside. And Chief, looks like you are ready to roll.
I was not at the last meeting because it was a short ad, but I did have some time to put together some information for tonight's meeting. And so basically just wanted to bring up, there was some concern from the one resident, and then I spoke with her after the last board meeting. As we stepped out, she kind of pulled me aside and we talked about a couple of different things that she was concerned about. And really this area along 7th Street North, where it transitions at almost a 90-degree turn into Riverside Drive North, she just basically said because of the nature of that location with a sidewalk ending off of 7th Street, there's no sidewalks on Riverside Drive North, kind of the narrowness, the no curbs, that she felt that there was some need for some other issues. She was talking about it, at least there was one crash where a person slid down 7th Street during the winter and crashed into a pole. That was another reason why I kind of preempted it with it may not have been a reportable accident, because as I ran the numbers, there's a community map section through the Department of Transportation which talks about crashes. I did a search starting back from January of 2001 to December of 2025. Obviously, we're not into December 2025, but it captured all of this year so far. There was one crash that was right over here to the east in that 25 year period. And so we just have not had reportable crashes. So again, data doesn't always support concern, but in trying to say we have a problem, sometimes that's helpful. And so in looking at that street view, it jumps really quick. In looking at that street view versus kind of this topographical information here with trees and everything, you can see right here the sidewalk ends. There is a pretty good curve here. Her conversation when I was talking with her is that people like to cut this short, and so they kind of hug this curb as they come around that corner. She felt at higher speeds, not necessarily speeding more than 25 necessarily, but maybe at 25 miles an hour when that curve really could be slower. And a typical driver may take it slower, but because our speed limits in North Hudson are 25, she did feel that there were people that were traveling on Riverside Drive and or 7th Street North at speeds higher than 25 miles an hour. And so talked to her a little bit about, potentially trying to find areas where officers could sit and run radar. That particular area is a little bit difficult in the fact that, especially on Riverside without any curbs, it's a little bit tight through there. But we did talk about that there's some options that we have in that particular area. And then also on 7th Street North on the hill there in trying to educate people. So some conversation then came up on signage or so let me rephrase, starting with speed limits. And so, in pulling up the state statute on why that speed limit is 25 miles an hour, in Wisconsin, the State Department of Transportation, through statute, has why we have the different speed limits we have. And it talks here about lowering an existing 25-mile-an-hour speed limit within a city or village to 20. So there's not, we can't go to 15, we can't go to 10 in that particular area. We could go from 25 to 20, but is that actually going to really change behaviors, and maybe are there different ways? And so in order to do that, the village would have to come forward, and they would have to have an engineering and traffic investigation done to support the change. Again, I think alone with looking at the crashes, I think we would have some difficulties with that. But if the village is interested in doing that, they could move forward with asking to have those engineering and traffic investigations done. If it supports the change, then they could request a change by the state to allow them to change it to a lower speed limit. Now, then the question becomes, okay, well, if we can't change the speed limit, can we do something different as far as signing, or would a sign that talks about the fact that this intersection is a little bit more dangerous or hairy than other areas within the village? So if you think of, or if you haven't been down Wisconsin Street North and Galahad Road North, again, is a similar kind of 90-degree curve. We did get requests from residents in that area to put up signage just to kind of make people aware of it. We do have signage on both Galahad and Wisconsin Street North kind of saying there's a dangerous intersection ahead. There's no statutory requirement other than kind of how the sign looks and the height of it and those types of things. So in order to have a sign erected in the village, this is our village ordinance on signs, and it basically said the street commissioner can procure and erect signs and signals. It doesn't have to, I mean, there's really very little as far as the procedure goes. It just says that the street commissioner, which if you look at the rest of the ordinance, the only thing that I could find that referenced the street commissioner, which doesn't have a definition per se, was that everything else that the street commissioner is associated with is streets and construction and those types of things, so it fits well with the public works director. And historically, that's who I've gone to if I've wanted to have a sign erected in the village, was the public works director. So if the public safety committee wanted to recommend to the public works director to put up a sign in that area of dangerous intersection, or slow down, something along those lines, that would be something that would be open to the committee.
So traffic control, like speed, is outside of, it's under state jurisdiction essentially.
Yep.
Signage is under the village, and it's under public works.
As long as it's not on the state highway, yes. So anywhere off of the state highway, because the state still owns Highway 35 in the village of North Hudson. Anything off of State Highway 35, the village could erect signs based on a need. I know that just recently a family moved in with a deaf child that lives between 4th Street North and Galahad Road North on Summer Street North. They requested signage put up, and the public works director put up deaf child area signage. So yes, that's within his purview.
So you're suggesting that this committee could take a vote? No, we don't. This is not a vote item. It's a discussion only item. That we could have this on for a vote in the future regarding potential signage along 8th Street North coming up to the intersection with Riverside.
7th Street.
7th, I'm sorry, 7th.
Chief, just out of curiosity, you mentioned that they could do like an engineering study, or what does that entail, and is that something the state comes in and does?
That's a great question. I know that I wouldn't do it. So beyond that, I believe the state could come in. They would probably put out their lines that would check the number of vehicles per day, per hour. They would have the speed. They would put out 2 of them to try to determine speed. But yeah, it would basically be volume and those types of things. But it would be either the state or our engineering group. I don't know which one would be the best next steps.
Are you thinking you want to pursue that?
Well, it would just be interesting to know. I mean, what's the cost to something like that? Have we ever done it in North Hudson? I mean, I don't know. I mean, in your judgment, does this warrant it? I don't really know what I imagine the traffic is decent on Riverside Drive. There's a lot of houses there.
Yeah, and a lot of people will utilize that to kind of get to the east side of the village, Riverside to Helen and kind of some of those areas on the southeast side. So I think there's a decent amount of volume that would go through that area. If it's not exorbitant, I don't know that a study wouldn't be worthwhile, just to at least answer some questions, or to say that you did and determine that there wasn't a need for certain things, if that is the outcome.
Understand the value of something like that.
Sure.
So where does that originate from, that request?
I can work with the public works director and find out if he thinks it's more engineering versus
Thank you.
the state. I'll reach out to him on that.
That would be great. Yeah, I guess information is good. And there was just an article in the Minneapolis paper about this, and I had shared it with the chief, that really pretty much said speed limits don't really impact people's driving speed. Other things do.
that.
Yeah, other things do, but we certainly, I mean, this is not the first time that somebody's come to this committee and said, the area around my house, people aren't driving safely. So it's not an uncommon concern. So having some sort of process would be good to figure out when it's actionable and when it's not.
And I guess just to re-up from the last meeting is that if there is something that people have concerns about, please contact the police department. We'd rather hear about it as it's happening than a year later, or as the neighbors get so frustrated that they finally call in and it's been going on for 9 months. We would rather work with them as it's happening. Descriptions of vehicles are great. A license plate is golden. So any of that information that we can gather will be helpful. I think I referenced the last time we had a speeding vehicle on one street, that we had a family that was very concerned about their children. After a couple of times, they finally got a license plate and found out it was a new driver. They were taking a shortcut. The parents helped us, of course, with holding the keys above the new driver's head to say, you will slow down. And the family never called again about that particular driver. So sometimes it's a conversation. We're not looking to cite everybody on those types of things. Just let's have that conversation. Maybe we educate the driver and things change. And in that particular case, it did. So we're just looking to try to work with the residents to help solve these issues.
And how do you want people to get a hold of you in those kind of driving infraction situations,
They can either call the department directly or contact the 24-hour non-emergency dispatch number, 715-386-4701.
Thank you. Anything else on this item? Okay. No, we don't take comments during the meeting, but I'm sure if you have a comment for anyone, our emails are on the website, and the chief's email is on the website if people want to try and reach out, and we welcome that. So the next item is the amending Animal Ordinance Chapter 10, Section 1010, licensing, discussion only. So Trustee Olson isn't able to be here this evening. She had done some additional research. We have certainly been working on this animal ordinance for quite some time, looking at what's absolutely necessary for regulation, what we don't need to regulate. And she had volunteered to take on the chicken questions. And so she's made her recommendations regarding chickens, and I'll go over those recommendations. And then this committee will, we're not taking a vote today, we're having a discussion about it, which, and then we will, I would say in the next month or 2 months, have a finalized version of the proposed ordinance changes come back to this committee. So the first thing, I'll go through first what she is recommending, and then make a couple of suggestions that maybe we can talk about. Okay. So she's recommending that we have that we clearly allow chickens in the village on residential lots that are designated for single-family dwelling, and that roosters are prohibited due to noise concerns and potential disturbances. And I'll just make a comment that we have had people come to this committee and say that they have been disturbed by roosters, and they're very uncomfortable being the people that have to talk to their neighbors about that. She's recommending, or based on the research that she's done, a maximum of 10 hens being kept on a residential lot. And let's talk about that when we get through this. That chickens have to have access to a secure coop that's appropriately sized for the number of hens. It needs to be something that protects the chickens from predators and has proper ventilation. This is very general. This is not the specific requirements that we inherited when we started with.
Yeah, it was some kind of state recommendation or something like that.
But yes, it had been obtained from another municipality. Fencing in yards, she's recommending that there is a fencing requirement for the chickens, that they're not allowed to free roam outside of the yard, that there is a fence and that it's secure, and that there's space for the chickens to roam. So again, no specifics about the height of the fence, where it's located, how much, any perimeters, that there is a secured fenced area. And that generally the chickens have to be cared for with sufficient food, fresh, clean water that's changed, and a healthy environment to prevent diseases and pests. And then adding crowing to the animal nuisance section, so that that noise, right now we just have barking or untimely noise making or barking, adding specific crowing. So those were her recommendations based on the research that she's done, and I think things that we've heard at previous meetings to minimize the regulation, but that we also are trying to have some regulation so that our animal warden has something to go on if there is an animal that isn't being well taken care of. Thoughts?
Can we ask questions of the people here?
I would prefer that we keep order to the meeting, and once we start that, it's really hard to keep order in the meeting.
Okay. I've got it. So it's interesting. The recommendation of no roosters is based specifically regarding noise.
Correct.
Okay. It would be interesting to know before we put this to vote. I mean, how many people have roosters here in North Hudson? I mean, I've met people that have chickens that have none, and I've met people that have chickens that have some. I'd also be interested in knowing what happens when you buy chickens and that you've got males that will turn into roosters. I mean, what do you do with them if roosters weren't allowed?
They would be called.
They would be called. Okay. And did she give any specific information about the fence? I mean, when, like, is it a fence around the whole yard, or is it a fence around the coop?
Just a fenced area, not specific, just a fenced area for them to roam so that they're not locked up in the coop, a fenced area. I keep going back to the people that were here at meetings before talking about roosters and that, I mean, there's no way to have a rooster that they aren't roostering. I am thinking about the minimum number based on public comment that we had tonight, and thinking that may be something that we really want to think about expanding. But
expanding and maybe get a little bit better sense of where people are, because with that, I think that would be a good idea.
So maybe when Trustee Olson is at the next meeting, yeah. Well, that's a possibility, which that was done with some of the other animal ordinance with a grandfather clause. Mm-hmm. So we can discuss that. In general, or do you have any other feedback on the recommendations that?
Yeah, personally, I feel a little bit about, which we've heard from a number of groups, why the scrutiny on chickens. I know I have people walking their dogs at night on my street that don't bring flashlights. They let their dogs poop in the yard and all that kind of stuff. I've never been bothered by a chicken. I did have a neighbor that had chickens. They had a coop. Tragically, the coop caught fire in the winter. I guess the lights, and she lost all the chickens. But the year before that, they did get out, and they were walking around in my yard, and they were just cool. They came around, they walked around, they were beautiful birds, and then they walked back. I always thought chickens were like these white things that, they were just beautiful. So, yeah, I think when Barb gets back, I would like to talk a little bit more, like, where she, specifically got the information, because
she's done a lot of research. I know she's done a lot of research.
I know she has, but I've not been able to talk to her about that. But I do have a soft spot in my heart for people that want to raise chickens. And as long as there's not a problem, I think it's good.
So it sounds like what we should do is have more discussion at the next meeting. We're probably not going to be ready to take a vote because we need to have Trustee Olson here to have more discussion and decide if there's any things that we want to potentially amend to those recommendations. Right. Okay. All right.
I would be good with that, Mary.
Okay. And we'll close that item?
Yes.
Okay. Item 9, Police Department staffing and coverage, discussion only.
I have wonderful news for this committee. On Tuesday, I offered a final offer of employment to a candidate, and he accepted. So I am excited to get him on board. He will be sworn in on February 22nd with the invite that went out to the police commission and the board. He can bring his friends and family and those types of things, but the department will be here to swear him in on the 22nd, and then he will start with me on his admin week, Monday the 24th, followed by 4 to 4.5 months of field training with myself and Sergeant Hecht. We sat down today and tried to do some of that scheduling. If everything goes kind of as the minimums are planned, it looks like early June, like June 9th, potentially he could certify for a solo patrol if everything goes well. We may have extensions in there depending on call volumes or ability to get through different types of training. But it looks like, definitely by the end of June for sure, if everything goes well, he will be on his own. So he comes to us from Lake City, Minnesota. His name is Ivan Vargas, and he has just completed in October the police academy. So he comes to us with no full-time experience in law enforcement, but has at least completed that police academy, and so we can get him right into training and move forward. So his background went really well. Lots of positive feedback from the community, and so looking forward to getting him into a squad car and have him learn a little bit about our community. He calls this similar to Lake City, although Lake City is a little bit more vast in size, but we're along the river. I think he feels that we have a small community feeling like that does, and so he's excited to be here too. So we're excited to have him.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good news.
Congratulations.
Third time's a charm.
And the next item, Police Department capital equipment planning, discussion only.
Just have one item that the sergeant just recently went through a rifle armor school to become certified to be able to do all of our armor checks on our rifles. The kind of going thought is that rifles should be switched out after about 10 years of service or X amount of rounds. He's working on trying to get me what he anticipates each rifle has gone through it, through training and those types of things. We purchased our rifles back in 2013 was the last time that we re-upped those. So we're at about 11 to 12 years since we ordered those. So I'm potentially looking at for the 2026 equipment or capital equipment budget to do a replacement. So he's trying to get some numbers for me and what that would look like as far as the transition to new rifles. I do know that the last time that we back in 2013 happened to be a great time to be transitioning. Because we did put on consignment one of our rifles up at the Hudson gun shop, and it actually sold for enough that we purchased almost all of the new rifles with just the sale of the one rifle. So it was a good time to transition, but we did also get they did a buyback program through Sig Sauer, and so we actually got more money on buyback for the old rifles than we had to purchase new rifles. So it was a good time. We're going to hopefully get to see if that's still kind of the situation, but otherwise we will do a buyback program if they still offer that, so to try to lower the actual cost to the village. That's the only thing I have at this time.
All right. So final is future agenda items. So we have our standing items for the police chief and fire chief's reports. Looks like we'll have the pedestrian and safety traffic on the next agenda as well, Chief, with the follow-up that you have with public safety and the animal ordinance, and then our other standing items for staffing and capital equipment. Anything else?
I can't think of anything, Mary.
All right. With that, we are adjourned at, is it really? 6:34. Thank you.